and welcome to GameSack. This time we're taking a look at some games that were translated by the fans themselves for you to play.
That's right. There's a lot of these out there, but of course it'd always be nice to have many, many more so we could have more games to play in the future and enjoy.
Yeah, and big props to the people who've translated these games. And let's just get right on into it. Let's check out Rent-A-Hero for the Genesis by Sega. This is an RPG-like game that many people were upset never got an English translation and a release over here. This was translated by a bunch of different people like Red Comet, Paul Jensen, and Nick DC. Anyway, let's see if Sega was justified in passing it up. This one kinda sorta reminds me of Sword of Vermilion, and that might be because it was made by Sega AM2. You start out as a plain ordinary dude at a party being thrown by your parents. Yeehaw! You try to order some more food over the phone, at least you think, but instead they deliver a Rent-A-Hero suit. After you end up knocking out your dad, you're informed that the suit belongs to a company called Sega who's trying to use it to offer a Rent-A-Hero type of service. And guess what? You're the first candidate for the job. Basically, you contact the company with your computer and they give you jobs to do. These can range from mundane things like delivering love letters and food to slightly more exciting things like saving a woman in a park and transferring money between banks. To do this, you've got to go from town to town to town depending on where the job happens to be. The battles take place in a side view screen. These battles play like a broke-ass Street Fighter. You can jump, crouch, punch, and jump kick. Simply touching the enemy will harm you regardless if he was attacking you or not. Oh, and your suit runs out of power just by wearing it, so you need to buy batteries all the time. You can change in and out of your suit at pretty much any given moment except in battle. And yes, you can fight in your normal clothes as well, but your stats are slightly weaker and you can't do a jump kick. You're also required to rent the suit for 200 gold per month, hence the name of the game. Once you start getting suit upgrades, that price increases. Each month in the game lasts maybe 20 minutes of actual playtime. This can get kind of annoying as you quickly need to make your way to a bank or ATM to pay the fee, otherwise the suit goes away completely until you do. And the random battles that pop up do not care if you have the suit or not. Now personally, I think it'd be better if they just deducted the gold from your account rather than making you try to find a bank or ATM in time, and they do not give you a lot of time. Another problem in the game is that the menu system kinda sucks. Granted, it's probably just due to its age, but sometimes you'll find yourself using items that you didn't intend to use just because the way the menus land. It's kind of hard to explain, just be sure to go slow with your button presses in the menus. And it doesn't help much that the text is drawn extremely slowly and there's nothing you can do to speed it up, but that doesn't stop you from pounding the buttons just hoping somehow that maybe it will go a bit faster. Your suit drains batteries faster than a Sega Game Gear, and it's a really big chore constantly buying batteries again and again, especially with the poor menus and slow text speed. As for the translation, it's fine. There's some errors here and there, but that's sometimes the case with real localizations as well. So whatever. The fan translators here sure like their Back to the Future quotes though. Overall, I'd say that the dialogue is pretty good and the characters are decently fun to interact with. Except for this stupid kid who tells me there's an arcade in town, but I'll be damned if I can find it. I hate that kid. The completed translation certainly helped me get a lot further into the game this time. Hell, you probably have a near impossible time advancing without it, especially since there's no online walkthroughs that I know of. I've got to say though that I don't care for some of the riddles that the game gives you at all. It was at this point that I just wanted to stop playing. But I persevered, even though the riddle doesn't have much to do with the actual solution. The graphics are okay, but each building kinda looks the same and all the towns are extremely generic. However, there's Western toilets all over the place, which is kind of interesting given the time that this game was made. There's not a whole lot of music, and what's here is passable at best. You will eventually get some new music as you wander around. I also really wish that I could pause and use items during a battle. So is this a game that we should all be sad that we missed out on? Well, maybe not. It is awful slow, but it does show that Sega is not above making games that didn't fit the norm. And I'm definitely glad that it was translated so I can see for myself what kind of game it actually is. And come on, you've got to give it a lot of credit for being something different than a normal fantasy RPG.
This is Akira for the Famicom. It's a text adventure game, and as you'd expect, it has walls of text at all points throughout the story. Games like this have a hard time getting translated into English because it takes a lot of time. Even when they do get translated, they're usually filled with English and lots of spelling mistakes. The game was released in 1988 to horrible reviews. Credits for the translation go to Pennywise, N1AHAC, and Dank. These guys did a pretty good job. I'm sure this wasn't an easy task, but I gotta wonder how hard it actually was. See, the game is based on the movie of Akira and not the manga. The movie has obviously been translated to English, so the text right here just needs to be cut and pasted into the game script. There is, of course, a fair amount of filler text which wasn't in the movie, and this is where the real translation difficulties would be. I don't want to take anything away from these guys because I'm glad they did what they did and all the effort they put into this so we could play this game. This was one of my favorite movies when I actually did watch this stuff. I'm pretty familiar with the story and I remember a lot of dialogue from the movie. As I was playing it, it brought back memories from when I watched the film. To me, this is really cool because I felt like I was actually taking part in the movie. Of course, this is basically an abridged version, so a lot of the scenes are left out. I'm fine with this since it seems they got the main points covered. It's really fun to actually just pick random things from the list just to see where it takes you. If you haven't seen the movie, then this game is going to be tough to get through. It won't be impossible, it's just going to take you a long time. As with all texted adventures, you choose what you want to do from a list of given choices. You can systematically work your way through these until you pick the correct response to advance the story. If you don't pick the correct response, one of two things will happen. Firstly, nothing will happen and it'll let you get back and pick from the list again. Or, in certain instances, you'll get killed or put in jail by making the wrong choice and this will result in a game over screen. You can always continue, but you'll have to watch a lot of the story play out again, and this can be both boring and very time consuming. At this point, I was just wishing I could skip through the text and just get back to where I died, but I couldn't. You can't even speed up the text, you just have to sit through it. And if you don't want to continue, you'll get a nice long password for when you feel like trying again. The game isn't all text, and there are a few instances where you play an action sequence. Like here, where you have to shoot down these FPH craft in the sewers. It's pretty basic, and all you do is press a button to duck when shot at, and press another button to shoot your gun. Even though it's simple, it's a welcome addition to the game in my opinion. The graphics are really well done, and all the characters look very close to their movie counterparts. I found myself more than once reading the text and the voices from the actors in the movie. They only seem to play music at intense scenes, and the music that plays is pretty grating on your ears. The game isn't very long, and if you know the story, you can run through it in a little bit better than an hour. And when I did finish the game, the first thing I did was grab the movie and watch it. If you have the means to play this translation, I recommend you do, as it's a well done game and true to the movie's plot.
This is King Colossus on the Genesis by Sega. This is an action RPG that's actually pretty damn cool. This got translated by the fine folks over at MyJet. You play as a dude named GameSack, which is kind of odd, but hey, happy coincidence, right? You live with an old man who treats you like crap and you do whatever errand he wants you to do. Generally, you're wandering through different areas in a fashion that's not too dissimilar from the Zelda franchise, but it's definitely unique enough to stand on its own. I mean, come on, Zelda doesn't have any patents on blowing open new passageways with bombs, does it? At the beginning, you have a sword and its reach is pretty damn short. It kinda takes a few minutes to get used to. Soon you find an axe with a slightly better reach and you also start leveling up. Pretty soon you're handling common bad guys with no issue at all. Well, that is unless a spider shoots you with its webbing. That's annoying. Oh, and there's also these bats who like to affix themselves to your head and suck all your life away. That's even more annoying. So of course, it's best to kill everything first before things like this can happen. Anyway, you go about your business and collect items and new weapons. One type of weapon spins around you like a mace, but if you don't hold the attack button, it drops and rolls around. It can still kill people and creatures as it rolls around, which is pretty cool, but it is kinda tough to aim. This class of weapons of course has the greatest range and of course is usually the most fun to use. Actually, there is one weapon that can reach further and it's the spear, but it only fires forward. Fortunately, you can walk in all 8 directions, but sadly you can't attack in all 8. Besides your weapons, you can also upgrade your armor and get shields. Oh, and let's not forget the different types of magic you have. They use up different amounts of MP. I really wish it would tell you how much they use per attack, but no, you need to figure that out on your own. Unlike Rent-A-Hero, you can pause at any time to use items, change your equipment around, or do anything the menu screen will let you do. This is really handy during boss fights when you need to restore your life or switch your magic around. Your character moves fairly slow, but it doesn't take you long to get used to it. You'll also notice that it can jump, which isn't often seen in games like this. Like here, you need to jump over the water. If you don't, you'll land in it and you'll be sucked all the way back towards the beginning of the level. Or here, you'll need to jump over the gaps, otherwise you'll fall back down to the floor below. Sometimes you want to fall through though. It's the only way to get to certain places, though it never shows you getting out. I like this scene here where all you have to do is walk across a bridge and it just crumbles away behind you. Definitely not hiring that contractor again. But anyway, how the hell am I going to get back down? The game never shows this. I need closure! The game is great fun to play, and it's really a shame that it never got translated until a few years ago. The translation is really well done and absolutely feels like something official. Never once did it creep into my mind that I was playing a fan translation. The story starts out pretty sparse, but it really picks up once you're forced into slavery and become a gladiator for the false king. Then things get pretty serious, and you know what you've got to do. You've got to save the entire land, that's what. And you're gonna do it. The graphics are pretty good and feature a fair amount of detail and color. They get the job done, and there's certainly nothing to complain about. The bosses all look pretty cool. The music is awesome. There's lots of different themes in here, and really they're all quite good, and the sound quality of the instruments is great with lots of bass and some nice stereo separation. There's some digitized samples in here, and they really don't sound very good though. This is a really good way to spend your time, and I highly recommend that you play this. You can probably stumble through it without a translation, but since one's available, why not play it in English? Check it out.
All right, Joe, well, let me ask you, do you think that the fans translating these games are, like, doing a solid translation, or do you think they're just making stuff up as they go? We could be having a completely different story than what the original developers had.
You honestly never know.
You don't know. I mean, unless you know Japanese, you never know.
But I honestly think that they tend to stick
I do too.
towards the actual translation.
I do too.
Or the actual whatever is going on in there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you never know. It's kind of fun to have a totally mistranslated game. That'd actually be kind of entertaining.
Completely different story.
Yeah, some fan translators put their own stuff in there, and but mostly it seems to be on the level. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we've got more to show you, so let's just get right back into it.
Fire Emblem for the Famicom is a strategy role-playing game that never left Japan. Thanks to Super Smash Bros. Melee for making Marth and Roy widely known, the series finally started getting a worldwide release. Still, the original game never made it out. Someone out there with the handle of Kurino translated the first game Fire Emblem Dark Dragon and the Sword of Light, which I'm playing here. The game stars Marth on his quest to raise a resistance army to combat the evil Dolar Empire. As far as the translation goes, it seems really well done. The story is engrossing and easy to follow. I've always been a fan of the turn-based strategy role-playing genre. I like the way these games play out when you control a bunch of soldiers and you obtain victory by seizing the enemy's stronghold. Your army has many different types of soldiers. You have mounted knights, regular knights, archers, clerics, a thief, and your hero. Since the story revolves around Marth, if he dies then it's game over and you must start over again. Each type of soldier has a range that they can move when it's their turn. Some of them can move farther than others. For example, horse-mounted soldiers have a larger range than a foot soldier. Once you get your character close enough to an enemy, you can attack it. Attacking is all automatic and you don't do anything but watch and hope that you do heavy damage and not miss. It's really fun trying to figure out what's the best way to move your army across each map. Overall, I like the Fire Emblem games, but it has one feature that I just hate. If one of your characters dies in battle, then that character is gone forever. I really don't like this, as ultimately it makes me want to hold back in battle. Say for example, I like this mounted knight. Do I take the risk of sending him into battle and losing him forever if he dies? But then again, if I don't send him into battle, he will not gain experience and level up. This will be hugely problematic in upper levels when you have to fight enemies that are at a higher level. And all you have is your low-level knight that you've been holding back because you don't want to lose him. I'm just not a fan of this. I think other games do it properly where when your character dies, he's out for the rest of the battle. When the fighting is over, you can resurrect that character for a small fee. Other than that, I really do enjoy this game. I like that as you're fighting, the story will unfold and events will happen that will change the way you battle. Like here, where this enemy soldier wants to see Rina again. Rina is a cleric on my army. I made sure to have them meet to see what would happen. They had their conversation and Rina talked him into joining my army. This is great. I could always use another knight. The battles can take a long time and typically run longer than 45 minutes to complete a map. The developers obviously saw this and put in an option where you can turn off the battle animation, and this will cut down a large portion of time. At first it's fun to watch these battles, but after the 80th time you just want to get on with it as it's too repetitious. Either way, you have a great soundtrack to listen to while you're playing. The music is good and I never got sick of hearing any of it. The game also includes a save feature, which is a must. You can save during battle, but if you do this, it will not let you keep playing. It tells you to hold in the reset button while you power off your system. After you've completed a map, this is the only time it'll let you save and continue playing. Fire Emblem is a great series, and if you haven't tried it, then give it a shot. You just might like it.
Every single person on the planet knows that Shining Force 3 on the Saturn was supposed to be 3 separate games. We got Scenario 1 here in the US, but Scenarios 2 and 3 stayed in Japan. Thankfully, Shining Force Central was kind enough to translate the others into English. So this right here is Shining Force 3 Scenario 2, Target Child of God. In this one, you play from the perspective of Medion, whom you met when playing as Synbios in Part 1. You're a prince for the bad guys, but soon you'll figure things out and turn to the side of righteousness. I won't even go into the story because it's very complex and honestly I didn't find it very interesting. Still though, I've got to give props to the actual translation. It's very professional and I can see that they put a lot of time into it. I mean, they had to. They somehow managed to cram 900 terabytes worth of text onto a single CD. It's not unusual to spend 15 to 20 minutes in a single room doing nothing but advancing text boxes. So this game might be considered half strategy RPG and half visual novel. Everybody has something to say and lots of it. Well, except for the prince himself. As for the battles, they play just like the other Shining Force games, so of course that means they are awesome. But now they're in 3D, so that means they're better, right? Well, not really. Actually, the 3D-ness kind of slows down the gameplay a touch. Unfortunately, you start the game out pretty overwhelmed with battles of 2 versus 25, so it can get pretty tedious. Still, I like that no matter what you do, you gain experience. You can suddenly gain a level just by healing yourself, for example. You can also rotate the camera with the L and R triggers at pretty much any time to get a better view of your surroundings. The graphics are pleasing, even though the sprites themselves tend to be fairly blocky. The music by Motoi Sakuraba is outstanding. But you already know this if you've played Part 1 because the music here is, for the most part, the same. It's all chiptunes generated from the Saturn, none of it is streamed from the CD. So if you want a very wordy strategy RPG that is now playable, then this is for you. Of course, there's also Shining Force 3 Scenario 3 Bullsome Rising. In this one you play from Julian's perspective. And of course that means he can't talk either. What's the deal with playable characters who are mute? Maybe I'm just supposed to substitute my thoughts for his, I don't know, that's my guess. Anyway, at first I didn't care much for this one because I kept dying in the first battle. After doing this twice, I was getting kind of frustrated. But the cool thing about these games is that you start to level up quickly, and even if you're defeated, your level remains. This is actually a really good way to level up your characters and gain an advantage if you're willing to die a few times. Anyway, suffice it to say, what I said about Scenario 2 could also be applied to this one. If you didn't know, all 3 games take place at the same time and run on the same engine. The graphics and music are still good, obviously. It's also worth it to note that these translations are always being updated over on ShiningForceCentral.com. They even retranslated Part 1 because apparently they changed the end and other things in the US version since they knew Parts 2 and 3 wouldn't be coming out. You'll also need to have a version of the game to apply the patch to, and also a Saturn that's capable of reading CDR discs. So if you've got all that and this looks good to you, I say go for it. So far I still prefer Shining Force 1 and 2 on the Genesis, but it's great to play the entirety of Part 3 in English now.
Kokoron is an action platformer for the Famicom by Takeru. It was translated into English by Akujin, and the translation is very well done. When you think about translated games, you mainly think of RPGs. These games usually have tons of text and are perfect for people who don't know how to read Japanese. I've got to say though that even a simple action platformer that has minimal text is worth translating. So the story has a dream wizard Taper coming down to let you know he can give you any kind of dream you want. A fun dream, a pleasant dream, or a sad dream. Oh, please give me a sad dream. I love sad dreams. I love waking up being depressed. He kind of looks like a real Taper if tapers were blue, I guess. Anyway, he tells the story of Princess Rua being captured and you must save her. The story doesn't really matter as you can easily play the game without knowing what's going on. Once you get inside a level, you instinctively know that you must fight your way to a boss fight. Before all that though, there's a few menus that do need a translation. You could kind of guess your way through these menus, but having them in English makes it so much easier. This is a great game as in the beginning you're told you must make your own character. For an NES game, the amount of customization is pretty deep. To start off with, you can pick from the type of hero that you want to be. There's a huge list and each one has 3 different styles. I of course chose a skeleton because that's what I like. I can't wait to be a skeleton myself someday. Pay attention to the stats at the right though because you could really screw yourself up and make a weak character if you aren't looking at the hit points over there. Also pay attention to the weight because this will determine how high you can jump. Moving to the next menu, you pick your body type. Yet another long list of choices from armor to a vehicle of some sort. Again, pay attention to your hit points and weight. The next menu is your weapon. All of them are different and when you shoot them, the majority of them have different trajectories. Then you get to name your character. Keep it short though since you're only allowed 4 characters. If you're not sure of your choices, don't worry because you can sample your character before hitting start and choosing your level. Once you're happy with your choice, then the fun begins. You can conquer the levels in any order you want. Here's where you feel the effects of your choices when you created your character. The skeleton is a bit heavy, so he can't jump too high, but it's still plenty to make the majority of the platforms. I really like the throwing stars for weapons, and while his HP isn't the greatest, it's enough to get me through the level. All the characters, no matter what their attributes, are a bit slippery to control. It's not horrible, but it will take a bit more effort from you while getting around. The levels aren't very long, and it won't take but a couple of minutes before you reach the boss. More story comes in here, and then a battle. All the bosses seem to have a long life bar, while yours isn't long at all. I died a few times on each boss until I learned the patterns. Once you do beat a boss, and you get to create another character. This is a really cool aspect, and it gives the game a lot of depth. The second character I created was a mistake. I like the looks of him as he has a jack-o'-lantern head and a spring body. He can jump really high, but he has very low HP. I decided to scrap him and try again. Like I said, the amount of options you have for creating your character is pretty deep. If one level doesn't suit your character, then try a different one. Speaking of levels, it's really cool how they start. At first, it feels like you're playing the same area even though you chose a different level. It feels like this because the developer wants you to feel that all the levels are connected. So after the Fairy Forest, I chose Trump Castle. The level starts out looking like the Fairy Forest and then it goes a bit through the Milk Sea level and then ends up in the Trump Castle. This is a great idea and it feels very fluid. Kokoron is a great game with good graphics and a good soundtrack. Do yourself a favor and play this one if you can.
All right, there's all the games that have ever been translated by fans for you. There are no more to look at, ever.
For this episode, anyways.
Yeah.
Of course, there's tons more out there. And
yeah, and if you've worked on a translation patch for a game, let us know about it. We'll check it out. I mean, like Dave said, there are tons more out there. We'll definitely cover this again. And
right, yeah, and if you have a favorite translation of your own, let us know. I mean, maybe you might want to check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. I winked it up.
Yeah, that was nice indeed. Good job. Joe!
You're dead!
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I got this screaming deal on Game Force and Boulder, man.
Wow!
Check it out. For the PC Engine CD, I got East 1 and 2.
Wow, dude!
$5.
Oh,
But I'm looking at the back and I can't read Japanese. And I want to know what's going on.
sucks, man! But the good news is, I happen to have the US version of that same game. Let's flip this around and see what all this says. Read it. Well, at least they translated that CD part.